Good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining us to have a bit of a deep dive into net zero at least cost for cold storage and cold chain. We'll just wait a few moments for a few more people to jump in. I can see the participant numbers flicking up and up, so I'll just wait for that to settle down before we kick off. Okay, it's flicked over to 11:01, so I might start some of the preliminaries and the chit chat. So let me start by saying, once again, thank you very much for joining us this morning. We're going to do a bit of a deep dive today into net zero at least cost for cold storage and cold chain. There are some big barriers and challenges out there for organisations in that sector looking to address their carbon footprint. We're going to focus today specifically on the energy aspect and largely look at what the energy market and supply choices can mean for your net zero position, although we will allude to some of the other challenges and opportunities that are out there for you guys. Allow me to introduce myself. My name is Hanna. There's a slide in the deck about who I am, so I won't take up. I don't want to talk about me too much, but I'll also be introducing my co-panelist, Tony Giannakis, who I had the pleasure of seeing in the flesh yesterday in Sydney, joining us today, however, from Melbourne. Okay, and I think we might jump in, Tony. Okay, so we will start with acknowledgement of country. In the spirit of reconciliation, we acknowledge the traditional custodians of country through Australia and their connections to land, sea and community. We pay our respect to elders past and present and extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders peoples today. I'm broadcasting to you from Parramatta, which is Darug country in the west of Sydney. And Tony, you're down in Melbourne, I mentioned.
I am. So I am from the Glenwaverley area, which is the Wurundjeri land.
Cool, thank you. Cool. A little bit about us. I'm going to introduce Tony. Tony joins us today. Tony's been in the energy sector for more than a decade, working with commercial and industrial businesses, of late doing more and more work with industrials, and helping them on their net zero journey. A feather in Tony's cap is that he led one of our marquee brand clients, who I can't mention to you, through the renewable energy purchasing cycle last year. It's a real pleasure to have Tony here to join us today, because what we want to do is shine a bit of a light on renewable energy procurement. We think it's probably not as well understood across industry as it could be. Hopefully we can provide a bit of guidance and light to describe to you how you can effectively make decisions to procure renewable energy for you go forward. Myself, I've been in the industry for coming on 2.5 decades, a long time. I watched the industry grow up since competition was introduced in the late 90s. I've spent a good portion of the last decade worrying about microgrids and embedded networks, spending a lot of time with organisations moving their business partially off-grid, building a bit of resilience by having on-site generation and bringing in storage and evolving business models in that space. But it's great to be back into the core of the energy markets, talking to you today on the behalf of Energy Action. A little bit about us. Our mission is to make energy cleaner, easier and cost less. We've been doing this for many years under many different business models, I suppose, as different aspects of the energy value chain have opened up and evolved. We're more than 20 years in the game, and I've been here for 20 years. And yeah, we're ASX listed, we're AFSL accredited. We work with perhaps 10% of the commercial business sector, helping them manage their energy procurement and manage their energy spend. Okay, look, just to frame our conversation today, we will look at a little bit at what this means for Australia. Some remarks by the Secretary General of the UN, Antonio Guterres, back in late February on releasing that iteration of the IPCC report into the climate challenge. Mr. Guterres was very unequivocal, sorry, in the importance of addressing the energy sector. As consumers, as participants in the energy industry, it's the energy sector globally, and we can see it here in Australia, that is really at the source of the climate change challenge for us. And Guterres here is imploring all of us to move faster, work harder, do more to make that transition to the renewables, So that's what we'll talk mostly about today. Okay, drilling down to cold storage. If we look at cold storage and, sorry, the cold chain, it's a pretty interesting one. The key elements of cold chain, obviously there's the electricity as an input, there's cold store itself, there's trucking, and then there's the path to the customer through commercial and retail applications. In cold store and in the trucking space, we can see a bunch of challenges that I'm sure you in our audience today have started to, are addressing and are thinking hard about. We're not terribly well equipped to deal with all of them, but just to give you a quick surf, it's apparent to us that there's a lack of regulation and standards in the design and maintenance of cold store across the sector, and that has in Australia led to suboptimal energy efficiency outcomes. The main reference points for standards come from the US and the UK. To this point, there's no Australian building code which relates specifically to cold storage, although there are there's some great opportunities there to drive energy efficiency as the building code starts to tackle energy efficiency in the sector. The sector is obviously electricity intensive. 85% of the cold storage facility will typically be, or more, will be wound up in its refrigeration cycle. That's great it solves the problem that a lot of industries are facing in terms of electrification. The electrification challenge has already happened for refrigeration, obviously, but it also points to where the challenges are for energy efficiency for the sector. While you can replace components and as assets evolve, it really is the big gains in energy efficiency in refrigeration appear to come from at the facility level, and it's facility replacement and, as I mentioned, building codes for new facilities, which will drive down the emissions intensity of the sector. We do a lot of work with clients who are managing their emissions reporting as well, and we can see a bit of a knowledge gap, perhaps in the energy efficiency sector, but more so in the emissions management sector. There is an amazing depth of literature, scientific literature out there about the global warming potentials of refrigerants. It's, the factors are very available, the science behind it is well understood. What we do see though, when we work with organisations, particularly organisations with a fleet of refrigeration facilities, the tracking the refrigerant leaks and tracking refrigerant refueling is not so straightforward. It's quite difficult, certainly as a third party, to reach into organisations and get hold of that data. It can be time consuming and awkward. I think there's opportunities there to close that gap between science and the practice of emissions management. Trucking, some great work done by the Australian Trucking Association a couple of months ago, just highlighting some of the market barriers that exist for electric trucking here in Australia and indeed globally. Fundamentally, there's no cost parity yet. It's significantly more expensive to invest in an electric truck at this point in time. And there were some great suggestions made by the ATA to improve policies to reduce that barrier over time and speed up the transition that trucking needs to make over future generations, future decades. Last one we'll unpack today. Renewable energy purchasing is not well understood. This is a barrier. There's 25, 28 suppliers, and there's probably more advisors, consultants and brokers out there. There's not a lot of consistency in energy offering, and I guess one concern that we have as a member of the industry is that people don't necessarily understand the consequences of what they're buying and how they can use renewable energy to report reductions in their emissions. And so we'll drill into that. And then the last barrier, I'm going to ask Tony to unpack this for us today, energy prices right here in Australia. Electricity prices up and down the East Coast, Victoria perhaps less so, but up and down the East Coast are extremely high right now. We're really feeling the bite on the energy commodity challenge to Europe as a result of the situation in the Ukraine and Russia's actions there. Okay, as I mentioned, there's loads of opportunities. NABERS has released a cold store benchmarking tool. It goes live this year. The industry, therefore, will be participating in a round of benchmarking and baselining. NABERS is fantastic for that. It's given great energy efficiency outcomes to other sectors. We have great partners that work in the NABERS space and the energy efficiency space that we can connect you with if you are interested in understanding more about how NABERS works, how NABERS can work to establish benchmarks and baselines in this sector. Also, IRA, the Refrigeration and Air Conditioning group, have released a best practice design for cold stores, which goes right through the design process to commissioning. It's a pretty useful document if you are looking at your next refrigeration facility. And look, I've just been looking the last couple of weeks at some modelling released by the federal government, done by a partner business of ours, Delta Q, looking at the impact that future business building standards can have on energy efficiency. The gains are in the order of 10% over the next couple of years by improving the business envelope, building envelope. That's in addition to equipment improvements as well. Other opportunities, the electrification work is done. You know, we don't need to think too hard about how to electrify other heating appliances in this sector, which is great. And as a result of that, as a result of how energy intensive refrigeration is, addressing renewable energy, addressing the challenge through renewable energy purchasing can significantly reduce the footprint of a refrigeration facility very rapidly over the short term and the long term. And we're here to help you do that if you're interested. And last point, solar and storage installation. In the high pricing environment we're in, solar is a bona fide cost reduction option for all cold stores, certainly ones with strong enough roofs. And it also obviously can reduce your carbon emissions. Again, we've got some great processes and partners in that space to help you if you're interested. Broadening back out very quickly to the Australian emissions economy, if you like. Energy is the big opportunity, in our opinion anyway, for emissions reductions across Australia. Through the lens that we look at the opportunity, you can see here on the left side of the screen, you know, more than 35% of Australia's energy emissions come directly from the electricity generation sector. And when you lay over transport and stationary energy over that and think about the electrification of those sectors as well, you can see that if we get the electricity sector right, and we get that on a renewable footing, then 50% of Australia's emissions will be captured and dealt with and mitigated in sorting out that sector alone. We think that's a fantastic opportunity. We're really looking forward to being part of that over time. On the right-hand side of the page, I've just pulled something back from COP26, the media around the Glasgow meeting in October, November last year, which was really about driving a sense of urgency across the globe into the challenge of global warming that it presents. Picked up stuff in the papers again this morning about weather patterns here in Australia recently, and what they hold in store for us. It's not great reading. The key message is that if we're going to mitigate the impacts of global warming globally, then we need to do more faster. So again, it's our responsibility as energy consumers and as energy industry participants to really try and lead the way on that. Okay, how big is this challenge for the energy sector? It's massive. It's massive. 3 charts here which just give us a bit of a look at what it means. One, the left-hand side, that's a bit of an indication of the change in technology and the amount of investment required and actually is out there to come into the sector over the next 25 years. The middle graph is looking at if this change happens, which way is the most likely, and when is it really going to start having an impact on emissions from the electricity sector. And then the third chart just gives us some relativities here that demonstrate what, if we get the renewable energy system working, what that means for Australia and some of the growth opportunities that exist for the nation if we get it right. So drilling into that, really, I'll be fast, but what we can see, we know that there's a lot of coal generation moving out of the market. That's all over the papers at the moment as we head to an election, the speed of that, and also obviously the games going on in the AGL shareholder discussions. There is a lot of generation needs to come out and is scheduled to come out of the market over the next decade. That will be replaced. It will be replaced by wind, solar, and batteries. And there's plenty of investment lining up to ensure that that happens. There are challenges, obviously, particularly around transmission resources in the market. Moving into the middle graph, this is a chart compiled by AEMO, working through with industry participants to understand where they see the emissions trajectory of the electricity sector going over the next few years. And you can see the step change. This purple scenario is what people expect to happen. You can see emissions really starting to fall down over the course of this decade to a manageable level, but that needs to be driven by government. It needs to be driven by consumers. It needs to be driven by the industry as well. It won't happen by itself. What will happen if the pressure comes off the industry is something that looks more like this. Progressive change. Change will happen. It just won't be fast enough. And then on the far left, the dream of becoming a hydrogen superpower. If we can crack that and get renewable hydrogen down to a reasonable cost, then there is massive opportunities for the economy. By the way, please feel free to jump in on chat and on the Q&A if you've got questions while we're going, and we'll do our best to answer those for you. Okay, and then look, the last graph I've got here is just, again, from AEMO, just demonstrating the opportunity that the energy sector will have to rise to. This is under that hydrogen superpower scenario, that the 500% increase in the actual size of the energy market. Okay, good news is that here in Australia and globally, renewable power is demonstrating itself month after month, quarter after quarter, to be cheaper than conventional fossil fuel power. We're in obviously a difficult and volatile transition phase at the moment. As I alluded to earlier, the cost of fossil fuel commodities has gone high globally, and that has had an impact here locally. And obviously, as thermal load, fossil fuel load pulls out of the sector, then maintenance and maintenance schedules and the continuous operation of the remaining stock becomes more and more important, particularly with batteries yet to really get to a commercial level. But just on screen, I've got here some levelized cost of energy charts out of the US back in 2019, but making the point that solar PV down to 4 cents US per kilowatt hour at scale in 2019. It's certainly about that level at scale here in Australia at the moment. Wind, onshore wind is the other dominant contributor here in Australia. At 4 cents in the US, it's slightly higher here in Australia, I understand. And that compares to the long run marginal costs of coal-fired generation that we're used to seeing in New South Wales, Queensland, and Victoria over the last few decades. We've always sort of modelled off about 4.5 cents per kilowatt hour as a long-run marginal cost. Often the industry's down below that, but right now it is not, I can assure you. Other key point I'm going to throw to Tony very soon and ask him to tell us a bit more about what's happening in the market. The other key point I really wanted to make today is that in terms of net zero and the purchases that you make in regards to net zero, if you want to be making a reportable, I guess, contribution towards net zero as an organisation, then to resolve or mitigate your scope 2 emissions, so the emissions relating to your electricity consumption, then it's really, there's a real requirement to ensure that you have renewable energy certificates surrendered on your behalf, either directly into your account or into an account on your behalf. These renewable energy certificates are recognised by all of the major reporting frameworks that people are using globally to make credible and realistic claims towards net zero. So that fact that I mentioned, renewable energy certificates are required under RE100, the Renewable Energy 100 standard. They're required under the UN's Science-Based Target Program. They're required, or they underpin the GreenPower program here in Australia. They're an option under the Climate Active program. Climate Active does also acknowledge emissions of carbon neutral electricity, but they're also looking at producing a renewable energy standard themselves. If you're reporting under NABERS and looking at the CERT standard, then for your scope 2 emissions, then you need to demonstrate purchase and surrender of certificates. And under the NABERS Renewable Energy Indicator, which will be released later this year, renewable energy certificates are required for that as well. Okay, so I'm gonna throw the mic to Tony. I'll just make the point. So when you're thinking about buying renewable energy, it's the cost of energy plus the cost of certificates that you need to be able to factor into your budgeting and your decision-making process in order to get hold of those certificates to report back into your reporting frameworks. So Tony, what I've got on screen here, mate, is the Energy Action Price Index. We're tracking commercial business energy industry, energy prices that we're trading and on behalf of our customers each day. We've come out of COVID and prices are going up. What's going on behind that, mate?
Prices are going up, and it's become more important than ever for our clients and every business in Australia to make a plan moving forward. What's happened over the last 6-ish months, 5-6 months, there's been multiple factors that have driven up the pricing across Australia. So, this time last year, we're seeing energy prices of sort of between $50 to $60 per megawatt hour on average across the country, or across the NEM, I should say. Now, we are finding that due to multiple factors, what's happening in Europe, environmental factors, AGL's announcement of the Loy Yang disruption, Erring station closures, energy prices have gone 30 to 50% higher across the network. So we're seeing pricing around about the $90 to $100 per megawatt hour, which, you know, that's a big increase for our clients. So we've been working closely with all of our clients to mitigate this issue and find a way to procure renewables to drive down their cost of energy.
That's right. And look, nobody can I guess predict with any accuracy what's going to happen in Ukraine and Europe. Even if we see the conflict situation dying down, I think Europe has some hard choices to make in respect of its future energy supplies. So I think we're in for a bumpy ride for gas pricing, certainly, which is priced off the oil price indexes globally, and also coal prices. Coal prices at the moment, there's a couple of things driving coal prices very high, which is impacting New South Wales and Queensland in particular. One is some of those contracts, a lot of those contracts in New South Wales and Queensland are indexed to international coal prices. The other thing, we're seeing a lot of shutdowns across the sector at the moment as well. On the right side of this chart, Tony, we've got renewable energy certificates, wholesale renewable energy certificate prices that we've been watching for a long time. And I'm just trying to draw out here how we've seen prices rise over the last 14 months or so. The grey line here is March last year, where you could buy a renewable energy certificate for Cal 23 at about $21 or 2.1 cents per kilowatt hour. As we approach COP26, and we saw a lot more voluntary purchase of certificates, we saw the price rise, and that increase on renewable energy certificate prices has continued out since. The prices are very high in the near term, and they're firming in the longer term as well, as there's more demand for renewable energy coming from volunteers. I've just been called out on my cents per kilowatt hour. Thank you very much. You're right. I did get it should be a lowercase k. Also, we've just got a question from Benny in respect of the slide I put up earlier about which showed a change in the energy mix. And the question is are the batteries being assumed to be charged from renewable energy in the table? The answer is not exclusively. They will be buying some of the business models under those batteries. They're buying energy off the grid and they're storing it, but they're certainly facilitating more and more cheap renewables to come into the market, the more batteries that are out there. So hopefully that helps. So look, to get hold of renewable energy, there are a few different pathways. We might start, before we get into different contracting styles, Tony, can you step us through how you're working with customers to help them think about the total end-to-end journey towards net zero in the industrial space?
Yeah, absolutely. It really is a journey with our clients. And one thing we identified relatively early in the piece is that most of our clients that we're dealing with now did not have a set plan on how to achieve net zero, which has been one of the biggest challenges for businesses across the country. We find that procuring green power or green energy is fantastic. Putting solar on your roof is fantastic, but how does that impact your net zero journey? So the first thing we identified we had to do was create a baseline. Measure your emissions, measure what your usage is, and from there, once we have that organized, we then work together with our clients very closely to set a target. one of the most important pieces is, are you looking to be carbon neutral by 2050, 2030, 2025? We set that target together with our clients, and then we provide the advice of how to get there. So step by step, we'll walk our clients through. The idea is that we need to get to net zero at least cost. There are solutions that can be quite expensive. However, there are many solutions that are not expensive. So, the idea is get there at least cost by the target, and then of course we work closely with our clients to deliver on the journey.
That's right. Okay. And I think a key message there. There's a number of options, right? It's not a one size fits all. To that end, I thought it'd just be useful to summarise down for people some of the various options that are out there for renewable energy contracting. There are, it's probably more than 6, but there's 6 pathways that we think about when we're working with clients to help them lock in a renewable energy contract which suits their business. And what suits their business, it's going to be a factor of their own sort of internal competence to handle risk, their own emphasis and importance on environmental, securing environmental outcomes over time. As Tony alluded to, it's a journey. We expect a glide path, and other factors around how to best to contract. But working through it, a PPA, a power purchase agreement via a contract for difference, it's a pretty complex way. A lot of very large corporates have done these over the last couple of years. They tend to be quite bespoke, and they put you into a situation where you're contracting with a project, and there's all sorts of generation project, and there's all sorts of risks that you need to be able to balance and manage there in terms of the project risk, and then the CFD, the contract for difference, is a swap around the electricity price, and there's treasury risks around that as well. So it can be difficult. Solar. Via capex or opex, you can pay capital and get solar on your roof, and there's, particularly in Victoria, we're seeing business cases down to 4 years for very large systems at the moment, and we're seeing that around the market too as energy prices rise. But there's also opex opportunities, write a service contract for solar, so engage with somebody to put solar on your roof. And agree to buy that solar at fixed and known prices. A significant contract we did last year saw one of our industrial clients lock in at 7 cents per kilowatt hour for delivered energy for the next 10 years. With CPI, we're probably feeling a bit of that at the moment, but significantly cheaper power produced on their rooftop, managed on someone else's balance sheet and someone else's asset register. And they're getting the benefits of renewable energy out of that. Wholesale progressive purchasing, you can go to markets and just purchase the certificates, the large-scale generation certificates, as a separate purchase to your utility contract. There's brokers out there. We can help you with that as well. GreenPower, Tony alluded to it in the last slide. GreenPower, and I mentioned it earlier as well, just to unpack it a little bit. It's a government-sponsored program which provides a level of accreditation, and there's a whole lot of audit work that government takes responsibility with between themselves and the energy retailers to ensure that you can claim and deliver renewable energy purchases into your business through the GreenPower program. It tends to be priced quite expensively. That's because it doesn't acknowledge the mandatory renewable procurement, which all organisations in Australia buying energy are already making by virtue of the renewable energy certificate target, which is currently about 19%. The fifth way down there is a renewable energy supply agreement, also called a retailer PPA, where you engage with the retail market. And again, we'd love to help you with this part of the process to specify what it is that you need for from an energy contract, which will be the certificates. It might be provenance as well, so that you can relate your business to a specific generation project, as well as the surrender mechanisms. That might make more sense for that to be someone else's problem. We can bundle all that up for you and take that to market and sign you up into a traditional energy supply agreement that has a renewable component built around it. And we can do that for 2 to 5 years and keep you away from a whole lot of the price and project risks that a PPA might deal you into. And look, the last point, carbon neutral supply. There are a number of retailers out there who are bundling different types of offset certificates into their energy price. Depending on the quality and pedigree of those certificates, they can do that at very low marginal cost, very low additional cost to the cost of the energy. Our concern, I suppose, is that it's not really addressing the renewable energy challenge. It's, I guess, mitigating the emissions by linking your energy consumption to another carbon program, which is, as I mentioned, not really addressing the renewable energy challenge for us. Tony, did you want to unpack power purchase agreements any further, mate?
I think I covered most of it. The one thing that I would like to add with your power purchase agreements is just when I speak to my clients about them, is just be certain that that's the path you want to take. They are very complex. There's a lot of time spent with your lawyers. There's a lot of time spent internally. It can take 18 months to 2 years to actually set up. Therefore, when my clients do approach me and say they would like to approach the power purchasing agreement method, my first question is, are you sure? And from there, we will then have to work closely over the coming months to get one set up. So yeah, it is one of those things that just be 100% certain that that is the path to take, because they are extremely complex, extremely expensive, and a very long-term solution.
Patience and a lot of attention to detail and risk management built into the organisation to manage these devices.
Absolutely.
Okay. Look, at another method that exists is progressive purchasing, and specifically in this context, we can talk about progressive purchasing for the certificates themselves. Tony, we do that for a number of large clients. In my opinion, it's a good fit where clients got their utility contract in hand. They need to move to a footing to secure the certificates for surrender for their stakeholders, and they're aware, very conscious that those prices move, trade in a market. If you're able to work with somebody you can trust in that space, that knows that space well, then there are opportunities to take advantage of as the market rises and falls.
Absolutely. We work with a number of clients who we provide the advice of when to purchase on a progressive purchasing plan. Now, what we advise is purchase when, a progressive purchasing agreement is very handy for them when the market is relatively high. Currently, if you qualify for a progressive purchase account, which is 10 gigawatt hours or more, we generally will say we'll generally look into it for you and provide that advice. Now, as the market drops, the lower it gets, if it's time to close out a position, then we'll work with that advice. But the most important thing with progressive purchasing is that whoever it is that will provide the advice to you, preferably it be Energy Action, of course, but whoever it is, you have full faith in them and can trust their decision making and their advice 100%.
This diagram here, I guess, depicts the ideal. The reality is that markets move up and down. the game is really about trying to understand those market dynamics to pick the moment to do trades and spread your risk over time rather than buying on a single day. Another option, we were moving back to the utility contract, I suppose, the energy supply agreement, is to go to market to the retailers and bundle in GreenPower. We've got a program we've been running reverse auctions for 22 years in this space to generate competitive tensions for our customers and getting great results. Really using the power of the market itself to drive down prices for customers. How do you rate that as a way to get hold of GreenPower, Tony?
Yeah, for majority of our clients, the reverse auction is the way to go. Just in terms of the competitive tension we put in for the retailers, we generally see, as you can see there, roughly 20% difference between first offer and last offer, or the successful offer, as I call it. And the reason for that is the retailers are sitting there directly competing for your business. And I have a number of clients who actually gather around a boardroom and watch the reverse auction happen live. And then, of course, adding on GreenPower within the reverse auction is starting to become more and more. It's starting to become more and more prominent as we move forward and as everyone's looking for GreenPower.
So, Tony, look, as we're winding up now, we've only got a couple of minutes to go. And I just wanted to give you the chance to talk about the Renewable Energy Supply Agreement, something we brought to market. It's a retailer PPA. We've got a little slide here coming up about some work you did last year. Do you want to tell us a little bit about the retailer PPA?
Yeah, absolutely. So as I mentioned earlier, with a traditional PPA, let's call it, they can be extremely complex. They can take a lot of time to set up, and they're extremely expensive. So what we identified and what we've been able to work together with retailers is the RESA product. Now, we first introduced it last year to a large client of ours, who is a very well-known brand, and we approached them and said to them, "What if we told you you could be net zero by July of 2022?" And they looked at us in amazement. We then explained to them that we can do it cheaper than what they're currently paying for their energy rates. Mind you, the market was obviously in a fantastic position, and that's the most important thing as well, picking the right time to renew your agreements. So with that said, they told me, absolutely, let's see what you've got. So we presented the RESA product. We took it out to auction. We had 8 bidders. Shell Energy were the successful bidder on this occasion. And we ended up saving the client on their energy bill, as well as being 100% green. So, 1st of July, that agreement will kick off, and they'll be able to say they're 100% green under the RESA product.
Okay, great, thank you. Yeah, it's a good product, and it's a very simple and effective way for consumers or commercial businesses to get renewable energy bundled into the utility contract, with all the benefits of provenance, understanding where it's from, and control over the marketing opportunity and the surrender mechanism. Okay, guys, we might just wrap it up there. There's one question that's come through from Kadeem that I just wanted to address. Kadeem's asked, the progressive purchasing service is says that it's useful to secure renewable energy at the lowest price. Can you elaborate on this? The key point that we're trying to make there, Kadeem, is that the certificates are priced on a market basis. That market price moves around over time. If you can track that market and understand the dynamics behind it, then there are opportunities for you to strike and buy certificates. It's about being prepared not only by observing the flow of the market, but also being able to make fast decisions, having the mandates and protocols in place in your business to move quickly when prices do move down. Or conversely, to move quickly before prices move up, or as prices move up. Cool. Guys, we've hit time, so I think I have to call it. We did just want to share a couple of tips and tricks with you. Key point, there are opportunities there. The market can support a renewable energy purchase now. It can be done reasonably quickly. You need to price certificates in. It's not sufficient for a retailer to tell you that they only have renewable generation that they trade with. What you need to be able to do is demonstrate to satisfy the reporting frameworks that you are buying those certificates and surrendering them. So to understand that really well, you really need to think through which reporting framework that you want to use and understand the standards for those reporting frameworks. Again, we can help you there. And last point, as Tony's been elaborating for us, there are many options out there for buying renewable energy, but it doesn't need to be difficult, and we're here to help. Thank you very much for your time and your participation, guys. I've got to wrap there, but there'll be a little package, including this deck, which we'll send out to everybody who's attended today, and a couple of tools, that we can provide you with as well, just to help you make that step towards renewable energy purchasing in your business. Okay, we're happy to stick around for 5 or 10 minutes, guys, if you want to ask us any questions or leave any comments. But also we appreciate that time's precious, and we've had the 45 minutes that we agreed with you. Thank you very much. Great. Question from Lachlan. Absolutely. We can share the fact sheets from NABERS and the IRA best practice docs out with everybody as well when we send the package. Okay.
There is also one question in the chat from Liam Gulliver asking in regards to our platform and reverse auction, do we guarantee a minimum of retailers who will participate?
You want to shoot it? You want to have a crack at that one, Tony?
I can have a crack at that one. So, Liam, we don't have a guarantee of the minimum number of retailers that will participate. However, in my experience, the Big Four will participate 99% of the time, which is AGL, Origin, Shell Energy, and Energy Australia. And on average, I will have roughly 8 to 10 retailers in an auction. But we do invite, over 20 retailers to every auction.
Yeah, just to elaborate on that, Tony, what do you see as the drivers for higher participation? Is it about credit rating, or is it time of the year, or where do you get higher participation out of them?
Yeah, there's a few factors. Credit rating definitely is one. However, I generally find that load profiles are a big winner for retailers. They like to see consistency in the load. Just makes it a lot easier for them to price and work out the correct margins to give you a competitive price. That is something we can work with our clients towards as well. Over time we can ensure that the load profile does meet what a retailer would like to see. Yeah, that's definitely one of the big drivers.
All right. Look, the other part of Liam's question there, does Energy Action have carbon consultants who can complete the footprinting work? Liam, our expertise and specialty is around the utility emissions, so we can help you certainly with Scope 2 and some of Scope 1, and we can help you build strategies around mitigating those emissions. We have partners that we work with where there is a significant proportion of Scope 3 emissions that need to be baselined and included in the footprint as well, but we don't do the scope 3 footprinting exercise ourselves. Cool. Guys, I think that we might draw a line under it there. Thank you very much, everyone. Oh, thanks, Liam. Appreciate that. Have a great day. We'll be in touch in the next few days with the package, and absolutely we'll make sure we have the NABERS and IRA documents included for you. Thank you, and thank you, Tony.
Perfect. Thanks.
Cheers, Julian.